Listening to the Community Hour, and here's your host, Councillor Shaban Mohammed, and you are listening to Ramadan FM 2018. I have two distinguished guests today, Zain Mia, who give yourself a plug, Zain.
All right. Well, I don't like playing my own trumpet, but all right. What it is, I'm a local resident of Newham. I'm a second generation, so I'm part of the furniture of Newham. Also a civil engineer, a doctoral researcher in civil engineering, and I'm from Canning Town South, a ward chair for Canning Town South and a local activist. And
my next guest is a retired councillor, Brian Collier. And the reason I actually bring Brian is Brian has a rich history of Newham politics, and actually seeing the borough go from a white working class borough into this multi-ethnic, diverse borough that we know today. So just say good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Shabs, and thank you very much for inviting us along. Bit of a walk to get here, but we're here now, and thanks very much.
Obviously, you are one of Newham's royalty, and I've had a lot of problems trying to bring you in. Obviously, when when you look for the Queen, you have to go to the right places, and obviously I've had to pick you up. We've had to go through Newham traffic just to get you here and listen to your. Obviously you've got a great history of Newham politics, and this is what I really want to pick today and ask you the questions. Obviously, how let me ask you the one question: is how did you actually get into the Labour Party, and how has the party changed from the early 70s to now? Obviously, we've got multi-ethnic councillors, we've got councillors from all different backgrounds. So give us a bit of a description.
Well, I moved into the borough in the early 70s and married my good lady, who was a Plaza lady, and we've obviously been here ever since. We've always been involved with the community, always been part of the social working process, and moving on from that, politics came online in the 1990, where I lost in my first occasion by 6 votes against a Conservative lady, and then won in 94. Since then I've lost 1 seat during the later period, and I've done 20 years, retiring in January of this year.
And you were actually a civic mayor, you and your good lady.
I was deputy mayor in 1990 to Riaz. I was mayor in 2000, and consort to my wife, who was mayor in 2003.
And how has politics in Newham changed? Obviously.
Well, if you wind back, you had a very strong Freemason grouping that with officers and councillors, but that was back in the day. And then you had a new young group of young people came in and took hold of the situation, became elected, and shook it by its neck, and moved on from there. And I have to say, one of those people was the retiring mayor of Newham, Sir Robin Wells, who was back in the day, Robin Wells, an ordinary councillor person.
And obviously we've seen great changes.
Well, you've seen great changes in as much as if you take the early 80s, you had the Newham 7, and all went down with that. But I have to say that Newham Council was the first local authority in the country to evict tenants who were racist. They were family over in Canning Town who were members of the National Front, had given a lot of hassle to local folk, particularly from the Asian community. And as I say, Newham Council was the first to evict that family. There wasn't any other local authority that had done that. And that put a block on what was going on.
And one of the things you talked about is, obviously, we've got a new BAME Muslim mayor of Newham, Roxana Fiaz, but we also were probably one of the first boroughs to actually have a civic BAME Muslim mayoress.
Well, we've got 2 bites of the cherry, and bless her, the mayor today is Roxanne, is the first executive mayor in the country, and nobody else will take that. Nobody else can come up to that. And if you wind back to, I think it was 98, where Sharma Mahmood councillor was the first Muslim councillor to become ceremonial or civic mayor. Because obviously executive mayors came much later when Tony Blair brought it forward. And
again, you know, we've got this great history of promoting BAME candidates in Newham, and obviously we had Amarjit Singh, who was elected, who was who actually started the whole thing of encouraging BAME candidates, and especially people from the Asian community to take a part in politics. And you know, this is where we are today. Obviously, I'm the first Asian councillor in a predominantly white working class area like Canning Town North, and this is how things have really progressed in Newham over this time period.
And I think if you rewind back, Daisy Parsons of West Ham County Borough was the first woman mayor, JP councillor in West Ham's time. So we've had a lot of firsts. And when you consider 1901, the censorship in West Ham was 316,000 people living in West Ham. And now Newham, the whole of Newham, official figures say that it's not that. Yeah. So there's been a lot of incomers, there's been a lot of people working hard. And of course, if we go back to the first butcher's shop in Green Street, you know, a great man. And you know I'm talking about. I went to Pakistan with him on another occasion with another Asian mayor, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, every time I meet you, we always have this discussion about Pakistan, and you know, talk us a bit about how you felt going back or visiting Pakistan, and what are your memories. Obviously, we've got a lot of viewers here that obviously got connections with the Pakistani community, and like myself, obviously, you know, second generation Pakistani.
Coming from a very poor background, being born in the slums of West London, and then when I moved to Newham and took over the role of providing young people with youth clubs. Mari and I founded the Room at the Bottom Youth Club in Balcombe Point, in Freemasons Road, swimming club at Beckton, and you know, we were both youth workers, and then moved on to the more social side, and then on to politics. But in '98, and bear in mind I'd never been out of the country, in '98 Sharma's husband came and saw me and said, "We would like you to assist in coming to Pakistan."
And what?
Okay, as long as I pay my own way, then I'm happy to do so. And we arrived at Rawalpindi Airport, and opened the VIP lounge, and we were all in there, and we came out, and there were the 6 armed guards in the saloon, and the 6 armed guards in the saloon, and the 6 armed guards. We did 23 engagements on the first day.
Cool.
And I can imagine you must, obviously the hot weather, and you must have been obviously sweating buckets. And
I was the only one with a Pandora hat, I can assure you. And then we went to, the gentleman's name is gone, but he's the poet, the very famous poet of Lahore.
Oh, Iqbal.
And we laid a wreath on his tomb. And then we went to the gardens, and at that time, the Afghan situation was on force, and every street corner, every piece of land were Afghan refugees. We went up to Peshawar and met with the Sultan. And you know, as you go in, and the big chair is there for the main man, and the chairs go down. And she was obviously talking, and then introduced me, and he said, "And what are you doing for my people in Newham?" We had just opened the Catherine Road Community Centre, and I said that to him, and he said, "I lived in Catherine Road for 15 years when I was studying to be a barrister." So that was good. It was at Eid, and we were invited back to the big hotel on next day for the Eid celebrations, and we went up to the Bangla Dam and elsewhere.
Well, obviously I've got connections there, and you know, indeed. My family actually come from that region where the dam was built. So obviously it's got like a sentimental value to me. But you know, how did you find the poverty in? You know, did it break your heart? You know,
I have to say, the people, and I class all now.
Yeah.
The people of Pakistan were very friendly. Obviously, the higher up the tree you were, obviously the better you were in some respects. But those I met who were on the bottom and below rung, and there's a group there, it's very similar to Dhaka, it's a group of brigands, a whole community who are out in the wilds, very famous for kidnapping and other things.
Yeah.
And that's what they do, you know, that's
that's
what
I mean, obviously.
You know, and it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
They had just done some Japanese bankers and things. But when we met them, we met good, I say honest people.
Yeah.
They were good, friendly people. And we opened up a school, and we were there for education, social services, as well as waving the flag for Nuam and ladies.
And also, like, you know, one of the things of when I do have discussions with you, we touch about Eddie Saab and obviously the great work that
I have to tell you, we went down to Lahore.
Yeah.
Karachi,
isn't it?
Well, went to Friday prayers at the Great Red Mosque.
Yeah.
Met with some Egyptian clerics and done all that.
Yeah.
And then we went down to Karachi.
Yeah.
We laid a wreath on the tomb of the founder.
Yeah.
And then I met this little, very frail man.
Yeah.
And this was Edie.
Yeah.
I have to say, he touched me dearly. And we went to his home, and he lives in this mansion.
Yeah.
You know, there's marble and there's gold and there's silver thrones. And I said to him, Edie, you're doing the work you're doing. How do you live in this mansion?
Yeah.
And he smiled and he said, one day a man came up to me and he said, here is a bucket and these are the keys to my home. You are doing greater work than me. Yeah. And I have to say,
it always breaks, you know, when you hear these great stories. Obviously, we're in the end of Ramadan at the moment, but obviously it's a time of giving, and it's very important that, you know, no matter how needy you are, we as people should always give and give generously.
And I have to say, it doesn't matter who I relay that story to, the number of people who know of or who have met him. Yeah. You know, and he laid down, you know, with the reason being that people died and nobody picked them up because they were this, that and the other. So he got his ambulance, went round, and then he put up the little cots on the corner and done that. And there is his home, full of women.
Let me just describe to our listeners about the cots. I mean, these were abandoned children that no one wanted, and obviously, rather than young mothers, cribs, young mothers going out to, you know, throw the kids to the dogs, or obviously just throw them out, kill them. He actually had cribs that were given to people that if they didn't want their children, they could leave them, and he would actually give them a home. You know.
And what he said to me is, right, he said, there are all women here, and these girls are trained to cook, sew, and then once a year there is a big celebration, a big opening, and the young men come in, and the ladies, the girls, choose their own partner. Yeah. Nobody buys, nobody's imposed, and this is the way it is. And if you don't, then you're happy to stay where you are. But such a nice man.
You know, obviously, you know, these people are far and few. In the, you know, in this time of, obviously in the world today, we hardly get people that have heart and give so generously to this great cause. And obviously, at the moment, obviously ED ambulances, wherever you go in Pakistan, especially in Karachi, they're still operating, picking people up from hospitals and from major accidents, and he's dealing with trauma. So obviously you've seen that side of things, and how, I mean, obviously you're very fortunate that you actually met the great man.
Oh, indeed. And I was so sad that he's passing. Yeah. You know, as I say, there are people you meet in your life. Like, you have your family, you have your father, you have your mother. but they are family, and you can't get away from that. But then every now and again, somebody comes into your life and touches you, and I have to say, that man did such a great man.
Yeah, you know, it's quite you know, even for me, just talking about him is quite tearful, because he was actually, you know, one of the heroes of Pakistan.
Yeah. But I have to say that I also met ministers, and I met the great and the good. And I have to say, the only time in my life that I ate off of gold plates with gold knives and forks was on my second trip to Pakistan. And I went with Sheikh, bless him, who said, "Oh, you've been with her, then you've got to come with me." Yeah, that's all right, it's no problem. Pay for myself, no problem. And we went and saw, they said, "There's a family wants to meet you," and we went out into the wilds in the middle of nowhere. And there was a very nice family there, and that's what it was. A huge lounge with food, ladies, Chesterfields, and on the side, gold plates.
So yeah, obviously you've got some great memories, and you know, it's really good to have someone so distinguished to share those great memories. And obviously we've got loads of listeners that are probably listening in and hearing your stories of actually going back to Pakistan for a person who's never flown, got on a plane, let alone seen. You know, you've gone to a different country, you've experienced a different lifestyle, a different way of living. And you know, obviously, it must have been quite humbling.
Indeed.
You know,
and I came back here, and I went to Plashet School, and I gave a talk and an exhibition there, because I'd gone with the head teacher. She was part of the team that went. So we had a great time.
And the other thing I was going to ask you, obviously, now you're retired. I mean, are you actually missing the politics side? What do you actually, if you could do things again, what would you actually change in Newham? What would you think that wouldn't really?
I think it's very difficult to change things in Newham that doesn't have a knock-on effect. If you were to turn around and say, then we will rehouse everybody who is in need of housing, for example, well then, where would be a place to go and bounce a ball with your child, your grandchild, or elsewhere? There's got to be a give and a take on this. You can increase. You know, we had the tower blocks in the 70s and 80s. Mari and I lived in tower block there for a good many years. We were happy, and then they decided to pull them down, and you had the Roland Point business. So that there is a social need for housing those in need in the borough, but as soon as you put somebody in a flat or a house, then there is a lift up, and somebody else then moves in underneath. It's a very, very difficult, very hard. I would not want to be in a position of the person responsible of housing those in need in this borough or any other borough.
And obviously, you know, you moved into Newham in the early 70s. I mean, obviously, we were still quite a poor borough.
Oh, indeed.
Lacking facilities. And have you seen a change? I mean,
well, we've gone full circle, because the problem then in the 70s was provision for youth. There was a cutback. So outreach youth workers, youth centres. I've volunteered at the Greengate Youth Club teaching photography because of the need was there, and then they closed down, shut. So we then had the problem with nowhere for children to go, and lo and behold, we're back in the same situation today, where there is a great need for young people's provision.
And obviously, you know, one of the main issues that are starting to arise now is gangs. How was gangs when you first moved to Newham? I mean, I know we had a racial problem, but would you say that was more gang related, or would you say it was more of where you came from? And
I think the problem you've got today is that if we use the word gang, now if you're in school today or you're in a community today, you consider that gangs are somebody who's a member of a group who would have no problems with putting a knife through your heart for no other reason than wanting your watch or whatever. Wind it back you had the problems back in the early 80s with groups of people who used an excuse to fight, to go back to the 50s, go back to the 20s. If there was a fight in a pub, they didn't jump on your head outside. There was a fight, and then you dust up and you shook your hands, you went back in the pub. There was none of this kill situation. And it is horrendous that we've got. And who's to blame? I really, really don't know.
I mean, I can't even, you know, I'm looking in my own ward, and obviously we've got gang-related issues here. And I think one of the big issues at the moment is gang grooming, which is really, really troubling and worrying. And obviously, you know, when you came into politics and you came for the right reason, we probably didn't have things like gang grooming. And even to that point, I mean, I went to school in Eastleigh in the early 80s, and I grew up in Canning Town, which was, you know, again, you're talking about race, a real racist area.
Where the first mosque was.
Yeah. I mean, let me, I mean...
And there was not problems with firebombing, and there was not problems with any of that. There was probably chasing you down the road, you know,
which is, this is a thing.
But there wasn't the vicious.
Yeah.
The vicious. And I have to say, America, New York, and whatever is over there going on, bleeds over here. If they get a cold over here, we get pneumonia here. Yeah. And that's where a lot of this comes from. You know, I go out with my dogs in the morning and at night, the watch is off, the ring is off, the wallet is empty. Yeah. Simply because, not necessarily I'm going to bump into anybody, but it's the fear of bump, and that's where the problem lies. It's the fear of what is going to happen when you go out your door.
Yeah, which is at the moment, it is starting to become a big issue, and obviously we have to, as a community, really work hard to address these issues. Obviously, we're talking about gang grooming. I mean, at the end of the day, the main thing is we need parents to actually ask the question of the children. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, some parents can't afford £200 pairs of trainers, but yet their children could be coming in to their house wearing £200 trainers.
You have to ask the question.
But we have to ask the question. But you know, the other thing, you talked about the first mosque, and I always relayed this story back to you about Canning Town Mosque. Tell us what your first thoughts were when you saw Canning Town Mosque. Obviously, we used to be opposite. What I'm going to tell our listeners today is that the first Canning Town Mosque used to be opposite a pub. So
it was a little shop on the corner.
Yeah.
And I gave photographs to our good friend Lucky Mir.
Yeah.
Of that shop with those shoes, and he didn't realise. He didn't realise that it went back that far. And when you go further west, go up to Regent's Park, and what's up there is a huge Arabic mosque. And there was no problems, nobody had any upset when that was built there. Yeah. Nobody said anything when it was taken part of the Royal Park. Nobody said a word. You know, you just got on with it. It wasn't a problem.
It's quite interesting because I think a lot of people don't realise the history that Canning Town has. And obviously you know a lot of history, but the actual mosque, it was obviously, we had a large Pakistani community coming into Canning Town, and they actually lived in Liverpool Road, Gage Road, and the way the mosque started was, you know, a collection went round, and you know, our elders are not here today to actually, you know, talk about the great stuff that was done. Indeed, but obviously, but that mosque was the start of one of many in Newham, and now obviously you can go all over Newham, and you know, a mosque is a stone throw away, which is actually shows how far as a Muslim community we have actually grown and how far we've come. But obviously there's other communities that have grown with the Muslim community, including the Sikh community. But the bigger,
if you take all of the communities in the London Borough of Newham, there are over 400 places of worship. Yeah. And we're not talking mosques, and we're not talking Methodist, and we're not talking Christian, and we're not talking Gurdwaras or temples. The whole of Newham, 400 of places where you or I can go and worship the way we are.
That's right.
Our prayers are to the one above.
That's right.
Regardless of what way you're looking up that pyramid, that pinnacle, we're all travelling to the same place.
Exactly correct. You know? But it's quite interesting, you know, we're talking about place of worship, and you know, obviously, you know, we came from the subcontinent, and obviously, you know, what is quite distinguished about Newham is that obviously we had people from the subcontinent had partition, and what is really good is that how everyone actually got on, despite our, you know, differences in race, religion, and the hatred that partition caused. We actually, everyone gets on in Newham so well. You know, that is actually reflected in obviously the iftari dinners for Ramadan. I've actually, as it's first time councillor, I've actually been invited to quite a few in the borough, and the diverse people that come in from all different communities, different backgrounds is really amazing, and it's vice versa. When it's Diwali, you know, we get people from, again, coming from all our different faith groups coming together, enjoying a great meal and actually talking about the great stuff like I'm talking to you today about Newham, and, you know, your thoughts on it.
Indeed.
You know, it's really, really good, and it's, as I said, it's a great. I wish I'd got you on early, because obviously our listeners probably want, you know, another 2 hours of you telling us how great Newham was when you were growing up.
Well, go to Islamabad, and there is a very large Gurdwara there.
Yeah. Go
to Lahore, and there's a very good temple there. Go down to Karachi, and you've got the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's all part of the mix. Yeah. You know, and it's there for people to use, to pray, to, you know. And if you go to India and you go up to Amritsar and see it there, exactly the same. Go to Akbar, go up to, you know, it's all there. It's all there for you to see. I'll give you one small incident. I said to, when I was in Islamabad, I want to go and meet people. I want to go and meet ordinary people. Okay, fine. So we went to the bazaar. About 12 o'clock. We got out the cars, and there was nobody there.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at 12 o'clock, the sun's up and people are indoors.
Yeah, that's right.
And then all of a sudden, from this little dark doorway, this man appeared. And he looked out, and he came out, and he spoke and said, what are you doing here? So they explained. He said, right, you must now come to my shop, and we will say poetry. And we went to this man's shop, and I can assure you that the desk table that I'm sitting at is about as big as his shop was. And he gave us Sprite, and we said a few prayers, and we said a few poems, and we were on our way. Now, what was wrong with that? Nothing.
Exactly. Obviously, you know, what you got to remember, I think, you know, at the end of the day, regardless of where you come from, and obviously, you know, people always knock Pakistan or the subcontinent, but what you got to remember, people there, you know, regardless of how rich and poor you are, they never distinguish that, and they always open their hearts to, you know, visitors and tourists, and that's probably what makes. Like, I actually enjoy going back to Pakistan when I do go back, and obviously it is part of my psyche, and it is, you know, part of something that is in my heart, and you know, obviously you've gone there, and it's always going to be part of you, of what you learn.
Now, one thing I must say while I'm on air, because I made a promise to people when I was in Islamabad. I got an invitation to go and meet people at the top of a restaurant in the middle of the night, and these were people from Peshawar. And they said, you're safe, there's no problem, but we want to talk to you about independence of Kashmir. And they made me promise that every time I went and discussed my trips to Pakistan, that I would raise the flag of total independence for Kashmir. And I'm doing that, so I'm making my promise 100%.
You know, it's really, really, really good, and you know, what I mean, it's really good that I got you here today, and obviously you've actually been a great host, and with a, you know, great history.
My pleasure.
You know, it's been really good. I mean, Zane, what would you like to ask?
Definitely.
Brian?
I'm just quite amazed at listening to the history and stuff. As you know, we don't go that back, but it's really nice to know how the how the borough formulated and came to this stage and how it is now. Because I mean, we don't really get enough. My mates definitely wouldn't know what happened before, you know, just a few years ago and stuff like that. And but knowing all of this rich history coming from you, I mean, it's a privilege, you know. And there's a lot of things that I've learned today, you know. And I just want to thank you for inviting me, and Ramadan Radio for inviting me, and especially.
I think you forgot one. You got one. Sure. We actually forgot one thing that Brian actually put a lot of time and effort into, was the Gandhi Gardens in Canning Town. Talk about the Gandhi Gardens, Brian.
I must say that I just want to thank you for that, because that's right next to my house, and it's so. I don't know, when you walk in there, it's quite peaceful and it looks really nice.
Obviously we got a rich history in Newham. And I don't think no one actually knows about the Gandhi Gardens and what they're about. And go on, tell our viewers.
So I retired from work. I was public health manager in London Borough of Lambeth. I retired and I lost my seat. What am I going to do? Am I going to sit in the garden? Am I going to... No. So I found this piece of land behind some advertising hoardings, been there empty for years, done nothing. I then get re-elected. And 5.5 years to get officers and others to allow that piece of land where, incidentally, Chaplin and Gandhi met in 1931.
We're talking about Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin.
Sorry to interrupt. So Charlie Chaplin and Gandhi.
Mahatma Gandhi
met in that very place.
Right by your house.
In that very spot.
In that.
See what I mean?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Newham is full of rich. It's got a rich history.
It's amazing. I can't.
Uncle Gandhi, as the local kids used to call him in Tower Hamlets, was staying at the Kingdom Hall, and the lady who was the Buddhist lady there said she came into the living room, and there was Mahatma Gandhi sitting on the floor, saying, "Tut tut tut, he's got a telegram." And she said, "What's the matter?" She said, "This buffoon, Charlie Chaplin, wants to meet. Why would I, quote, want to meet this buffoon?" And they met for 3.5 hours. Now, word got out, 2,000 people on the Beckton Road by McDonald's as it swung round.
Yeah.
You've got Chandler Street.
Yeah, Chandler.
House on the corner of Chandler.
Yeah.
Right. So Dr. Sharma, I forget his other name, and he is remonstrating out the window, go away, and all these people are going, hurrah, hurrah. And then the wall comes down, and then the outside toilet comes down, and then the shed comes down, not out of any wrongdoing, but just the sheer pressure of people wanting to get a glimpse of the two great men. You know, and bear in mind that Chaplin had come from gypsy family in Waterloo, and Gandhi obviously has come the other way because he was part of the Tata Steel charitable organisation, and then went to South Africa and was quite, black and white shoes and all of that, and then founded his way forward to take people.
And obviously,
the best thing was that his great-granddaughter came on the day to take part in the opening of the Gandhi Chaplin Garden.
Oh wow, that's amazing!
You see what I mean? How much history?
Wouldn't know this, you know, because you just walk around, you just think it's bricks and mortars, but these bricks and mortars have a story to tell, you know.
Now, I'm going to challenge you now. You go into that garden, from whichever end, and look up, and you will see Chaplin on one side and Gandhi on the other. But you've got a little flickering going on of little silver and black. Part is made up like a mosaic, and it looks like a black and white film flickering.
Yeah. It's very smart. Very smart, I must say.
Indeed.
I've not noticed that, but I show when I go in there. You know, you meet.
And you know, the last time I was there, and it was only last week, I didn't see any crap there. There's no dumping. There's no people going there and use it. Their children are there. They said to me, what you need to do, you need to go around and knock on every door to make sure everybody wants it. That'll get rid of him, right? So I went round and knocked on every door, and only one man said no. And I said, look, you know, I won't name the guy. I said, you know, you're from the Asian community. Why? He said, if you put up Gandhi Garden there will be tens of thousands of Hindus coming here to pay their respects.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
No, we have it there as a community facility. We have young people there. And only 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a guy who's bringing over a group from Norway. And where do they want to go? They want to go and see the Gandhi Chaplain Garden. And they're not Hindus, they're not Asian. These are people who've heard about it and want to come and see it.
Well, that's really great now. Now I know, but I mean, where I live is a landmark now.
You can become a guardian.
I can. I shall become a guardian.
It's so amazing.
A voluntary.
You know, we're actually in a borough full of rich history, and Canning and that area is full of, obviously, means a lot to many Asian families, and especially, obviously, the Kashmiri families that grew up in Canning Town, and obviously we're all over the borough now. But you know, if you ask many young Pakistani families where did they originate, and you know, 99% of the time it's always going to be Canning Town, where incidentally we did have the first mosque, and obviously that was one of the first things that everyone did come to, and you know, it was a lot of hard work, and you know, I could actually remember all the racism that we actually had with that mosque, and the connections of obviously the local community did have, you know. So you know,
that's what we remember. Like, I mean, as you know, your nephew is a good friend of mine. I mean, like what we've heard about Canning Town is just about racism. We've not heard about anything, all the history and anything before that. I mean, how Canning Town, we had the first mosque, and you know how the diverse community used to come here, and because as we grew up, like you know, we heard about Canning Town was it's all about racism, and we've not, and that's shadowed the many good things that did take place within Canning Town, and it's quite nice to know today. I feel a bit bad not knowing all of this, you know, but it's really good to know that a Canning Town has more to it, right, than a bad history.
You go on about Canning Town, but I think Newham in general, I think, you know, it has a lot more. It has really evolved as a borough, and obviously it's really the Muslim community in Newham have actually got so much going for it. It's unbelievable. You know, I've seen, you know, from a small community how we've actually gone, and you know, we're literally all over.
The Lascar community down in the docks.
Yeah.
You know, the turn of the century was one of the largest communities outside of the Indian island from where they came. And again, it's another area that somebody needs to grasp hold of and to see what has come out of that. The last example I will give you, if we're pushing for time, is the Wood Grange Cemetery. Now, if you're going to, and that's very much now, it was originally a Freemasons showman's cemetery, and is now one of the major Muslim cemeteries in the
That's
borough.
right, yeah.
But if you go there, you will see, as you go through on the right-hand side, there is a stone memorial, and it says that this memorial was erected by donations from the Imperial Japanese Navy, officers and men. This lady, Mary Mackenzie, and her sister entertained in their home over 2,000 officers, men and merchantmen from the Japanese Navy, and the Mikado, the emperor, gave them an award that was recognised in Japan.
That's amazing.
Yeah? So it is these bits of information that are there, and slowly going, pulled down, taken away, got rid of, tucking in a corner, forget all about it. And
you
we
know,
really need to keep hold of all of our history,
our rich history, and obviously, indeed. You know, that's the only reason I actually bring you in today, is actually to tell our viewers about the rich history that you actually. You know,
knowledge is free. What
that's
you do
right.
with it is down to you.
I mean, you know, as I said to you, I keep telling you, you know, Brian, you need to write a book. We need to, you know, at the end of the day, it's like our history as a community. Obviously, you know, what you got to remember, a lot of merchant navy people actually came from the subcontinent.
Indeed.
And they actually, some of them actually came to the docks. They came to Canning Town. So this history, we do have it, but it's actually telling our school children about this history that we have. We didn't come over in the late 70s as immigrants, but we were here a lot earlier on the merchant navy and working on people from the subcontinent were actually working on the navy and doing coming here and also facing the racism that we have today, or very little of it. We have today.
You will always have those who have more, and you will always have those who have less. Civility costs nothing. And at the end of the day, it's how you're brought up. And if you've not got the guidance laid down by granddad or dad or whatever, then you go by. But there are strong women out there. And what I say to people is this: you only have one mother.
That's right.
You can have 100 fathers, but you've only got one mother. And I have to say that from the Asian community side, when I meet mothers, it's there. They lay it down how it is. And hopefully that the rest of society, the rest of the communities will also go down this route, because it's going to be your history, it's your future that's going there.
And obviously, from the Muslim community, obviously, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him,
Indeed.
Actually said, heaven is at the edge of your mother's feet. So.
Indeed.
I just wanted to ask, because obviously now, as we were growing up, before when we went to school, there was some interaction between our friends from different backgrounds and different races and stuff, and in the middle, obviously, more racism began to occur, even within Newham and outside Newham, and hopefully, I believe that hopefully we worked more closer with the communities and it should calm down. But in terms of community cohesion at that time, how was it? Because from what I hear, like Bookie's dad and all these other people in Canning Town and in Newham, the elder generation, even my people like my granddad's age and stuff, they said at a time, even though there was some kind of prejudice and so forth, there still was kind of that kind of respect between people. And so
what you had was this. You had the war, so you had the whole of that 5-6 year period of rationing, where everybody pulled together. You then had 12 years of rationing after the war to pay off the debt to America for the lease lend program. They stitched us up big time on that. So everybody was in the same boat. In 1947, 48, I was called back to school, 5 or 6, and a list was read out. Blah, 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 Joe Bloggs, blah, 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 right, come back at 5 o'clock. I got home, mum's working, so I was saying to my sister, I've got to go back at 5 o'clock. Go back at 5 o'clock for what? Well, there is your box. There is your food aid parcel from Canada. With rice, with jam, with a tin of this and a tin of that, right? So everybody, if you was the rich guy, in your mansion in Mayfair and wherever, or elsewhere, then that was fine. You were up there, but the majority of folk were down here. So you were all on that same dead level. Plenty of work. Up until the 50s, when, and again, I don't know whether or not you look at it, that there were those who were fearful of the power of the unions. So therefore, one way of doing that was to bring in more labour so you controlled the unions, and that's the stuff with the Windrush and all of that. So you had that situation, so everybody was there. Give you an example. Well, how many Asian people did you meet as a child? Well, I can remember, knock on the door, and there is a Sikh gentleman with a suitcase and he's selling ties and shirts and whatever at a cheaper rate than you could buy them at the shop. So that was fine. Africans, but the only Africans that I saw was either on the Saturday morning cinema or in the collection boxes that came round from the local church when you went to church, and then as you walked out, the clergyman said, take that home and fill it up with small change. You know, so there wasn't. All right, if you went to Cardiff, that's fine. If you went to Limehouse, that's fine. You got the Chinese. You came to the East End, and you got the various areas, the various pockets. But it wasn't across the country.
That's right.
People would never see a Chinese man.
It's quite interesting because, like my own father, when he first came, he actually went to Walsall. That's where obviously the main industry was of it, and then I think he was doing stone grinding when he actually came down. He always tells me the story about him stone grinding and working in a stone mill. Obviously he caught TB at the time, and obviously he was sent away for 3 or 4 months to a specialist hospital.
Sanatorium,
indeed. A specialist hospital, and then obviously when he came, when you moved to Canning Town, when he came down to Canning Town, he actually worked in Goswell's. Obviously, you know about Goswell Bakery. And one of the stories, he actually did say that obviously there was the union power and strikes. And obviously people were, factory bosses were actually getting fed up of unions and striking. So obviously we had, in the early 70s, you probably had the mass immigration from the subcontinent and the West Indies. And he goes, my father started off in the packing section, and all of a sudden, next minute, his cousin came in, and by the time we got to the early 80s, this whole section was literally, it was full of Asian people from different backgrounds, and majority of them were our family, and that's how it worked. And obviously that was one of the main reasons why some in pockets of Canning Town you did have racism, because obviously they thought, these guys are coming in, they're taking our jobs, they're taking our, and what I always got labelled, or even when I was at school, the council house, you guys come over, you take our houses and all this sort of stuff. But actually, I never actually lived in the council house, because my father rented until he could afford to buy his house, and he actually ended up buying his house. He never lived in social housing, and he never claimed off the government either in terms of unemployment benefit.
Well, my mum, bless her, I left school in April 1957, and my mum said to me, you can have as many jobs as you want, but you'll leave on Friday and you will start on Monday. Yeah. And never had a...
We had, obviously, people keep saying to me about Canning Town and the rich history of jobs, but that was Newham all over. You could not go into one part of Newham without actually finding employment. You could literally leave one job and, could start tomorrow at another job. And we did have loads of great industries, including obviously matchmaking, soap making. You had Burke's and Spencer acids, that Mattison's. We had a rich history of
some of the biggest and richest warships. We supplied warships to Turkey. The Japanese Imperial Navy had 8 battleships that were built in Canning Town.
You see, contrast to all of the things that we have now in terms of lack of jobs within Newham, and just focusing on the current situation in terms of crime and youth de-escalation, right? I think one of the things, obviously it hasn't been that long since we passed our youth now, and one of the things that we found, if you're in employment, if you're in training, paid training, right, you're less likely to go out there trying to cause havoc, right? Indeed. And what you yourself and Councillor Shaban Mohammed is saying in terms of how it was before, and you couldn't move from one ward to the other, and you can find job. But now for the youth and for the other, different generation, work is quite hard to find even in Newham now. It'd be such a nice thing. Yeah, we can't build ships now and stuff. Maybe we can, we don't know. But if there was more opportunities. It sounds quite nice. Like, it sounds like a movie. Do you know when you guys talk, I'm picturing like a movie, black and white movie and stuff like that. When my dad used to talk to me, bless him, my dad's passed away, but he used to talk to me quite a lot about this, right? And he used to talk to me about, the East India, the dock, and that's where the ships will come, and these the people that used to work on the ships, they will stay around for like a week or so before the ships will go. But he always told me there was employment around, right? I mean, if only we could focus more. I mean, trying to bring jobs locally in Newham. Yeah. And we could definitely solve a lot of issues like that.
What you fail to forget is, I think in the early 60s and 70s, even like our forefathers come over with very little or no education at all.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest factor. And I think even for poor EastEnders, that's still a factor today. At the end of the day, what you got to remember, in those days, it was your poverty. Your rents were still an issue, getting the right amount of money. I mean, obviously we've had unions come in. Unions have changed the way the job prospects for people and what we've actually achieved.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the early, we've actually gone full circle. Now, parents, especially many parents, do 2 to 3 jobs just to pay rent. And it's still a killer. Yeah. But then at the end of the day, once you start neglecting your children, they get into gangs and crime. So these are the main issues. I feel when social poverty again, is a killer. And we've addressed it a little bit towards the mid 80s to mid 90s. We tried to eradicate it, but I mean, we had a Labour government under Tony Blair, and at the end of the day, he done many great things. But at the end of the day, what did we actually achieve as a Labour government?
He could have done a lot more.
Yeah, you understand. We could have achieved a lot more. I think we lost our skills. We had kids leaving school. We were encouraged to, you need the university. We are going to have. The next generation are not going to be factory workers. They're not going to be skilled labour. These guys are going to be accountants. They're going to be working in offices. This is sort of the areas that we focused on, and we neglected the skills like plumbing, plumbing, engineering. We neglected these areas, and actually this is why we've actually got a skill shortage. Yeah. And obviously we blame Eastern European labour, but at that time in '95 we had no skilled labour. We didn't have no plumbers, and the cost of training people up was a lot more than actually getting cheap labour into areas like Newham.
But the problem then arises that if you're paying unemployment benefit, and then you're employing people coming from elsewhere to do the job of carpentry, plumbing and whatever, surely the easiest option would be to look and see, well, there's the benefit money you're paying out. Why don't we have a scheme of what we would call today trainees or apprenticeship, and get them moving through the process of government funding, whether it costs you a bit more, but at the end of the day you can see the light coming through, that you're then going to have your plumbers and your bricklayers, and then that solves your problem of housing.
Yeah.
Because you've got the skilled force here, and you haven't got the kids on the street corners doing whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said before, as some of my friends, they went on a different path, right? And some of us were quite fortunate to break away from this, and we got ourselves into education and university and so forth. But even though I still have a lot of friends that have done through university, are civil engineers, that's what I am, but finding it quite difficult to find work, and especially locally as well, because there's been loads of developments around Stratford, around Newham, around so forth, but local people and the local graduates or the local kids or local, don't even have to be kids, but local people from other generations, they have not really been given that priority for employment and stuff. I really think that it's a point that Councillor Shaban Mohammed touched on. Nowadays, people are working 3-4 jobs just to earn that ends meet, and just for that rent and stuff. And so when I look back at the stuff, like my dad, he didn't work 3-4 jobs. He worked 1 job. He fed us. He paid all the households, even his family. in the subcontinent.
I think that's one of the main issues is the social disconnect between parents and children. You know, at the end of the day, when most parents working two to three jobs, you know, they're never at home. You know, they'd be lucky if one parent sees their kids over the weekend, and you know, then the kids blame the parent for not being there, not knowing that the hardships they go through. And you know, you look at things like material goods. You know, every child nowadays is demanding, and you know, he wants the £200 iPad or the £200 trainers, and you know, and these are the factors that we have to really look at.
Indeed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's also like the expense of living, rent, everything, and that goes on. Some people have to work a few jobs, right? But the kids are definitely being neglected. One thing I definitely have to say, my father, maybe I didn't get a Lamborghini when I was 18, but what I can say is I spoke to my father. My father was there. He was strict, but definitely I had that bond with him. And, you know, the love was there, you know, and so I didn't really need to look too much to material things. So when the kids, they can't really grasp that, the love from their parents. I mean, they look for it from other, other places, such as materials, right? And it brings an extra burden. Do you know what I mean? But, when I listen to especially yourself and a bit of what you're saying, I mean, even though money wasn't, I mean, like nowadays people earn the salaries, our average salaries are really high, but it doesn't do. But people earn much less money then, but they, as I said, they fed their family, they fed themselves, they even fed their relatives in their back home countries as well, and they still had some money left over.
Yeah, one more thing I'm going to just touch on, Brian, is obviously, are you still involved in the PIPs?
The imps.
The imps, sorry.
I'll
get
I have to say that the...
Can you just tell our residents what the imps are, obviously?
The Imps Motorcycle Display Team are a group of young people. The organisation has been around for 46 years.
In Newham.
Based in Newham. They start at the age of 5 and they leave at 16. Last year, they were in Canada as part of the Founders' Day celebrations. They then went on to Halifax, Nova Scotia to take part in the 100th anniversary of the Canadian involvement into the First World War. They have been to Jordan, they have been to America, they have been to Singapore, they have an 8-day safari across the Sahara Desert as part of their training program. They've been to Edinburgh Tattoo 13 times. They've been to Ireland, they've been to France, they've been to Germany. They were in Switzerland 2 years ago. And I have to tell you, if you've got a moment, that they were in Edinburgh at the time when King Abdullah was there with the Jordanian contingent.
Yeah.
And he was so impressed.
So this again, you know, Brian is...
I
should describe him as Mr. Newham. He is Mr. Newham. Obviously, he's done so much.
But I would like to add and endorse what you're saying. I think you should write a book. So because people, even the next generation. Now you've told me that I can't remember a lot of the stuff. Maybe in the future. Then let
me tell you one thing, right? Obviously, a lot of viewers that are listening in today probably can seeing Brian, but obviously some of our listeners are on the internet. But Brian always looks immaculate. And just tell us the story about you looking immaculate, because it's again it goes back to his mother.
Yeah.
Go on, Brian. Tell us.
I have to say, and I showed people, there's a photograph of me at the age of 15 leaving school, and my mum said to me, as I said about the jobs that you leave on Friday, start on Monday, and she said, and this is how you will leave my house, whether you're pushing a broom or sitting behind a desk. Because people will say that if you're looking scruffy or dishevelled, what must his mother be like? And this is the way it is, and you see the way I am.
Brian is always immaculately dressed.
I've seen him like that since I was since I was.
That's one of the main reasons why. I mean, it's good parenting, and alhamdulillah, we must pray that every parent makes that effort on their own children and making sure that
Inshallah, the future will hold everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And we wish everybody well.
Yeah, definitely. I just like to wish everybody a Ramadan Mubarak, better late than never, and you know, and
I'm quite. I'll tell you the truth. I'm quite sad because obviously this is my last program, obviously until probably next year, but. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Obviously, we are trying to raise money.
Yeah.
For we have got an FM license, by the way, but we are trying to make raise money. Obviously, you've seen what the work this radio station does, Brian, and the amount of viewers we're reaching out to, and it is a community-based radio station, and it is reaching Newham, but we want it to. Obviously, we want Newham people to listen to us and obviously listen to the views. And we have got a donation hotline, and any listeners out there can donate on this number 07840 551 119. And you know, it's been a great. Well, obviously we were very late coming in and bringing this distinguished guest in today. I was battling traffic to bring him in.
Well, you're excused for that because you know.
Well, it is the way it is, and obviously Eid is upon us, and you know, we wish everybody out there
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak, everyone. And
again, to all my listeners, thank you for listening to me. You have been listening to the Community Hour on Ramadan FM 2018, and hopefully you've enjoyed my show. I know when I first started, I was struggling. The first show was I didn't think it was that great. You know, obviously it's getting used to a radio environment and talking to people. Also, we are missing my co-colleague Shagufta Nasreen.
Yeah, she's great.
She did wish all our listeners happy Eid Mubarak, and you know it is a good time and a prosperous time for our Muslim community out there. Indeed. So thank you everyone for listening, and hopefully I will be back in some small capacity. And thank you very much. Goodbye.